Good morning and welcome to episode 229 of the Newtown Big Dreams podcast. Today is June the 14th, 2021. It is 5 o'clock in the morning here in the West Coast. Today I'm with Raymond Riopel. He is a life-transforming trainer. He's an author and he's an app designer. And he lives in Lacombe, Alberta, a small, beautiful rural town that I've never heard of before. And Robert's going to tell us all about Lacombe, what it's like living there, how he ended up there. And he's going to tell us about his passion, which has been for the past 18 plus years, traveling around the world and helping people to achieve financial freedom. His own journey, Robert was completely stressed out. He was $150,000 in debt. And he got himself to complete financial freedom by the age of 32. So his passion is to help others achieve the same. And he decided that if he could help even just one person achieve their financial freedom, then it would be completely worth it. And it's true. I agree with him. So he talks about his personal experiences, his struggles, and his wins. And that's why he connects so well with his audience. So we talk about developing oneself as a trainer and as a public speaker, how to live an empowered life, and 6 steps to creating the life of your dreams. So let's welcome Raymond Riopel to the show right after this.
Welcome to the Newtown Big Dreams podcast, an interview-style talk show that's your gateway to the fabulous and fascinating people who relocated to start a new life. Whether you're new to our podcast or your city, our fellow neighbors from across Canada, North America, and the entire English-speaking world share their stories of reaching new horizons and big dreams. So sit back and relax as we navigate in-depth and intimate conversations with entrepreneurs, thought leaders, executives, creatives, and anyone who can share their story about their Newtown big dreams. And now, here's your host, Luke J. Menkes.
So Robert, good morning from Lacombe County, Alberta. How are you this morning?
It's bright and beautiful, and I just watched a beautiful thunderstorm go through. So it started the day off great. Yeah.
So what, I know it's super early there. It's like 6 a.m. there. It's 5 a.m. here. We're both early risers, obviously. What is it like in Lacombe County? Where is it located?
Well, we are in central Alberta, and we are just north of Red Deer, Alberta. And so we're in a beautiful little area, lots of farmland. And I happen to live on an absolutely gorgeous acreage that my wife and I moved into 3 years ago.
Nice. So that's, if I understand correctly, it's roughly halfway between Edmonton and Calgary, roughly.
Correct. Absolutely.
Right? Yep. Now, have you always lived there? Or are you not place?
Well, yeah, yes and no. I was born in BC, where you're from, and we moved around a lot as kids because my parents were always having to move just to keep working, just to support the family. And so we actually ended up in your hometown in 1978. We were in Kelowna. And up until that point, I'd never spent more than like a year in any school or 6 months in a school because we were moving around so much. And in end of 78, beginning of 79, we actually moved to central Alberta. And this is the first place we really put down roots. Ended up living there, going up there, high school, and then moved away in 1991 for work. And it took my wife and I 27 years to get back here because our goal, we had met and grew up and got married here in central Alberta, and we always wanted to get back.
Right. So what's the current situation with the COVID lockdowns in that part of the world?
Well,
I know it's a little bit different everywhere.
It is. And we just entered phase 2 of opening back up, which, everybody's starting to be able to go back to hairstylists, which you and I don't really need, but restaurants, bingo halls are opening, casinos are opening. So the world's coming back to semi-normal, I guess you could say.
Oh, that's good. That's great. So you talk a lot about becoming an authority in your job or your business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Tell us the steps. How do you do that?
Well, one of the things I noticed throughout my life and doing the trainings I've been doing around the world for the last 18 plus years is I noticed that you can have two people with the same knowledge, or even one person can have less experience and knowledge than the other person, but the person with less experience would make more money. And I started to realize that the difference was being an authority. If you're seen as an authority, people migrate to you. Whereas if you're not seen as an authority, you can have the exact same knowledge or better, but people aren't willing to pay you as much, or you have to hunt them down instead of them finding you. And so I started putting studies into
Very
that.
true.
And I realized that there's not only what was separating people is not only the practical skills. So as an example, you, Luke, doing a podcast, that's one way to help position yourself as an authority because it is credentials that you have.
Right.
So there's definitely the physical things that you can do. But one of the biggest things I noticed is stopping most people from having greater success is their interior, their inside, what's going on inside of them, their mind, whether it's self-doubt, whether it's, well, everything goes great and then I hit a roadblock. And so I started also doing a lot of deeper work on what is it that blocks people or holds them back. And when you combine the two, I found that there's a great formula to be able to help people, no matter what their job or their business is, to start position themselves not only as an authority, but to be in alignment inside themselves with being that authority so they can have confidence in it. And most people I've found that don't have the confidence, they end up coming across as arrogant. And then that turns other people off.
Right.
They don't even know why they're doing it. So by having the balance in the two, you can position yourself as an authority, have the confidence to own it, which will then attract clients, attract customers, get you raises, get you promotions at work because you're actually owning your abilities, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. So I think you talk about 6 steps to get there, 6 steps to creating the life of your dreams. Let's talk about a few of those steps.
Yeah, and the 6 steps to living the life of your dreams comes from my first book, Success Left a Clue. And it's something I needed in my life, is what it comes down to. First step is very simple. It's to dream, but not to just dream, but to actually dream big. And I'm going to take us back to our childhood there, Luke. When you were a child, did you have big dreams? Did you have a lot of things that you wanted to do or thought was possible? Right. And as kids, anything's possible. Sure. I remember sitting on my bed in my room, and one day I'm a truck driver, so my bed's the truck. The next day I'm a doctor. Then I'm an astronaut. Anything was possible. But as we grow up, society starts to teach us reality. Be realistic. You don't have the right education, or you're not born into the right family, or whatever the crap is. And so we start dreaming less. And a good friend of mine, Les Brown, which a lot of people know. Mamie Brown's baby boy, Les Brown. You got to be hungry.
Really?
I love what he says.
Do you know him personally?
Yeah. He's actually a good friend. And he wrote the foreword to my book.
Wow. Wonderful.
He started off as a mentor, and then I ended up becoming friends and a mentor to him, and we've mentored each other back and forth. So, known each other for a number of years.
Wow.
And I love what he says. He says, it's not that we set our goals too high and we miss them. The problem is we set our goals too low and we hit them. And that gets us playing in a bit of a mediocre mindset. So I love to help people start dreaming big again. You don't have to worry about or wonder how am I going to do it. Just start setting big dreams, use vision boards. So that's the first step. The second step is find a mentor, find someone to model from. Because unfortunately, most people, they believe that they have to, even if there's a system in place to have the success, they think they have to reinvent it or they have to do it differently. And so then they struggle. And so by finding a mentor or model, someone to model, gives you the great ability to sit there and say, okay, not only what worked for that person, but what didn't work? What can I avoid from learning from their lessons? And that one also has a double take on it. I tell people that not only look for a mentor or someone to model from, but also ask yourself, who can I be a mentor for? Who can I model? And this is an interesting one for people because then they go, well, Robert, who am I? I don't really have skills, or I don't have anything great in my life. And I'll disagree with them. Every one of us has a gift to give. The world is the way I look at it. And even if you're not the best at something, if you started something and you can teach someone how to, or guide them or assist them, then find the people that could use that information to get started. So that one has the double take. Find a mentor, someone to model, but also ask, who can I be a mentor for? The third step, you can have the greatest dreams in the world, Luke. You can have the greatest mentors in the world. But what stops most people is they forget to take action. So step number 3 is take action. I love the saying that says one step in the right direction is worth 1,000 years of thinking about it. And so
so true.
It is, right? And so it's about, what is one little step I can take today to move myself in the direction I want to go in? Then step number 4 is very basic. It's something, you have people, they have these big dreams. They find a great mentor or someone to model. They even take action. But then they wonder why they sabotage themselves. And it's because they forget to do step number 4, which is celebrate. Celebrate your life. Celebrate your successes. Every morning I wake up, I start off with a success journal, and it's morphed over the years. Not only do I write in my success journal, but it's successes or things I'm grateful for. As we started the show, I mentioned I got to watch a spectacular thunderstorm roll over my property. And I look at that and I go, I am grateful for that weather because it's been pretty dry. So having that rain, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
And so I love, so I start every day with writing down, what are my successes? What am I grateful for? So that it keeps that at the top of my mind. So that if something goes wrong or is tough during my day, instead of focusing on the negative, non-supportive, I go, okay, that's happened, but look at the great things going on for me. And it allows you to keep moving forward when otherwise you might get stopped, if that makes sense. And then, so that's step number 4.
Totally.
Step number 5 is believe in yourself. It's amazing. And I this one, when you talk about personal, because I was asked on an interview a few days ago, what is something I still struggle with on a daily basis? And that's self-esteem, self-doubt. And the person looks at me and they go, you have self-doubt? And I'm like, oh yeah, I have self-doubt. And so for me, it's a consistent, always working on owning who I am. And again, in confidence, not arrogance. And so when you start to believe in yourself, this is why it's important to surround yourself with people that see the greatness in you and are willing to hold you to a higher standard. When people ask, they say, Robert, how did you get where you are today, where you get to travel around the world, pre-COVID, of course, and you get to impact over 500,000 lives? How did you get there? And I'll tell them right off the top, I said, if it wasn't for my amazing wife, I wouldn't be here doing what I do today. See, if it was left up to me, I would be comfortably miserable in a job. But you see, my wife's not willing to let me play smaller than I am. And so that's a gift she gives me. Right. And it's a gift I give her as well. Because how many times when we get into our own heads and we don't believe in ourselves, and someone else, they look at us and they go, no, you can do this, or you need to do this because, and they hold you to that higher standard. And so having those kind of people in your life and allowing yourself to create a bigger belief in yourself. And again, confidence. I want to be very, very clear on that. It's not about being that arrogance. It's not about letting your ego run rapid, but confidently owning, well, Robert, I was told as a kid that I shouldn't brag. Well, to me, if you're sharing what's good in your life and what you're doing well, that's not bragging unless you're trying to shove it down someone's throat, unless you're trying to use it as I'm better than you because. And so having humility and having humbleness is a very, very important thing. So those are the first 5 steps. And the 6th step might surprise you, Luke. The 6th step is repeat the first 5. just repeat the first 5 steps. Because the way it works is when you set dreams, you find a mentor or someone to model from, you take action, you celebrate that success, that will elevate the belief in yourself, which will then allow you to set bigger dreams, find greater mentors, take bigger actions, have bigger celebrations, more belief in yourself. And it becomes a beautiful perpetual motion. And so that's why I decided to write those 6 steps, because it's what I found has helped me in my life, and now thousands and thousands of my students.
That makes a lot of sense. So I want to focus a little bit on, I think it was number 2, getting mentors, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is that right?
Absolutely.
So tell us the story of how you met Les Brown, because when I was broke, I was trying to mentally, psychologically recover. I decided that what I put into my head was the most important thing I could do each day. So instead of listening to sad music or, stories of things going wrong or too much TV news, I started to listen to people like Les Brown. And Les Brown was one of the people that was so inspirational to me. I would hear his stories of his own self-doubts and his own, sadness and worry that he was actually going to be able to make it. And his stories are so inspirational. So tell us how you met Les Brown.
Well, I was doing a training, and I was doing a very advanced 5-day training where I teach. I've been blessed to train thousands of trainers around the world. And so I was doing the advanced version of this. I had about just under 200 students in the room for 5 days. And the company I was contracting to, they had got a hold of Les to come in and teach a piece, because it was all about speaking, all about being a trainer, stuff like that. So Les came in, and he did a 3 or 4 hour piece teaching the audience, and of course blew everybody away. Now, because I was the lead trainer, I get to sit down with Les, get to have a conversation with him. We went and had lunch together. And when we were at lunch, he said, Robert, he said, I hear your students talking about the best way to sell from the stage and market and stuff. He said, can you walk me through that? And so I walked him through, kind of what's the template of how to really impact people and really be able to monetize your trainings. And after that, Les gets back on the stage to say goodbye to everybody. And he goes, he says, in the last 20 years as a speaker, I've made $22 million. He said, with what Robert just taught me in the last 45 minutes, I'm going to make $22 million in the next 2 to 3 years. And, we, instantly kind of had a connection. And it's interesting that you live in Kelowna, because my parents were living in Kelowna at the time. And I was going through a rough patch because my mom had just been diagnosed with cancer. And I was talking to Les about that and sharing, and a little bit of emotional. And he says, I need your parents' address. I said, what for? He says, I'm going to send your mom my cassette tapes of how I got through cancer, how I got through it. And I'm just like, you don't have to do that. And he says, no, I don't have to do it, but I'd love to do it. He says, you're an important person. And obviously your mom's an amazing woman. So I want to send it to her. And sure enough, he got right on the phone. He got a hold of his assistant and had that assistant mail out his audio cassettes to my mom. And I just, you don't meet people that authentic and that amazing very often. And that just instantly cemented our friendship. And over the years, when he calls me up, Robert, what are you doing? And I'm like, baby Brown's baby boy, Les Brown. And we just have a lot of fun. And I ended up helping him a bit with his speaking company and his trainings. Went to a couple of his events because he wanted me to watch him from a logistical side. And my wife, who is a logistics master, we went down to Florida one time and audited one of his trainings, and then to give him feedback, and because he's always wanting to learn. And that's the other thing I look for in people is who are the people that think I'm good enough, I know enough, and who are the people that say, no, I know I don't know everything, and I'm not afraid to ask for help. And so those are just some of the examples of how we bonded and how we became friends.
So you're saying Les Brown still loves to learn, still loves to hear from other people. He doesn't think that he knows everything.
Absolutely.
And that's really amazing because he's one of the smartest guys you'll ever listen to, right?
Without a doubt. Without a doubt.
Yeah. Is he the same personality in person as we see on YouTube, etc.?
Well, see, that's the other reason I absolutely adore this man. Because unfortunately, in the training arena, sometimes a lot of the times who you see on the stage is not who you see off the stage. And when I train trainers, that's one of my number one goals. I said, I don't care who you are, be the same on the stage as you are off, so that you are authentic. And he is one of those people that is so authentic. Who you see on that stage is absolutely who you see off the stage.
That's wonderful. Really great. And number 4 was journaling. Do you have a specific journal, or is it just a notepad? And is it the first thing you do every day, or when during the day do you journal?
Yeah. So it started off as being a notepad, and sometimes it goes back to that. But I actually specifically, based on my book, Success Left a Clue, I actually created an app a few years ago. And one of the things that's in the app is a success journal. And now version 1, we've now taken it offline because we are working on version 2, which is much more enhanced. And we went from a success journal of 5 things that you write down each day as a success to actually having 6 major journals where you can write as much as you want or as little as you want. We've made the encryption so tight that even as the developers, we can't read it. We can't read what you're writing in it. And so it came around for me where I started off just 5 successes a day. And what I do is some people say, well, I write mine before I go to bed. And other people say, well, I write in different times of day. I've gone through a lot of different ways of doing it, Luke. And what I found that works best for me is I don't write in it at night, because when I'm getting ready to sleep and I'm winding down, I introspect of kind of how my day was, what were the good things, what worked, what would be successes. And then I allow myself to sleep on it, so that when I wake up in the morning, then the first thing I do is I do the success and gratitude journal. And the gratitude kind of came in just from trial and error, because I noticed as I was writing down successes, sometimes I'd be like, well, what was another success? And all of a sudden I go, well, this isn't really a success, but I'm grateful for. And so I thought, well, why not write that down? And then all of a sudden people's names would come up sometimes. And if a name came up, I'd ask myself, why did I just think of this person? And it would usually bring me back to a specific time with them or an incident or something that all of a sudden why I was grateful. And so then I decided to take it to another level. And this really only started because of the times with COVID and having some great connections with people that I haven't had the time to connect with over the last few years because I've always been busy, right? And I decided that, instead of just writing down a name, why not send them a message? No attachment, but just say, hey, say if it was Les. Hey, Les, Robert here, just wanted to send you a message and let you know that today you just came to my mind when I was writing my gratitudes. And I want to thank you for being you. I thought of this time. And then I send the message with no attachment to whether they get back to me, no attachment to whether they listen to it, just because I'm expressing out to the universe my gratitude towards that person. And, a lot of the people, I never hear a thing from them, which is okay. But it's been amazing how some of the people are people I haven't talked to in years. And all of a sudden they're like, wow, I needed that today. I'd love to connect. It's been too long. And I've been able to remake some connections that, I haven't had in a while, which has been pretty powerful as well.
Yeah, it's so true. And I agree with what you say about gratitude, that it's good for you. Even if you don't get a response on the other side, you feel better. It's a great daily adjustment to do for ourselves.
Yeah.
When you mentioned sometimes you struggle with self-esteem, which I agree, it's hard to fathom looking at you and talking to you. But what do you do when you get in those modes where you're kind of down on yourself?
Well, again, I don't catch it all the time. And I'll use the example. I took 3.5 years off. Late 2008, I was burnt out. I had been doing so many trainings. in North America and then starting to go overseas where I was only home on average 2 days a month. And I knew I needed a break. And I decided to take a year off. That year turned into 3.5 years. And I was getting ready to come out of retirement. And my wife noticed something was going on. And she's like, what's going on? And I'm like, nothing. Right? And like us men like to do. And she's like, no. What's bothering you? I'm like, nothing's bothering me. And she's like, Bull, what's going on? And I took a deep breath and I said, what if I don't have it anymore? And she's like, pardon me? I said, it's been 3.5 years since I've trained. What if I don't have it anymore? What if I don't know how to hold an audience and deliver the energy? And what if I've, lost it? And my wife looks at me and she goes, are you done? I'm like, what do you mean, am I done? She's like, are you done with that crap? I'm like, no, what do you mean am I done with that crap? What if I don't have it anymore? She looks at me and she said, honey, the moment you step on that stage, it's going to be like you have left. And I'm like, but, and I was in a lot of self-doubt, but she wouldn't let me wallow in it. And so if I can't catch something, the people in my life notice it and then they help lift me up. And so, yeah, and she was, of course, Luke, she was right. Of course she was. The moment I stepped back on stage.
Our wives usually are.
Right. I've learned, we just celebrated our 32nd wedding anniversary. And I've learned in all this time, 2 most important words in a relationship. Yes, dear.
Yes, dear. That's right. Yeah, no, that is so true. Getting that positive feedback from the people around you is super important. And when I've been in a rut like that, what I need to be reminded of is to just stick with the process. So I have certain tasks to do.
Right.
And I try to find a little bit of joy in those tasks. So like this podcast takes many, many hours of administrative work and scheduling and producing. And it's not my favorite part, but I do enjoy it. And so I think about, I'll listen a part of the conversation while I'm editing it and cleaning it up. And I was like, that was a really great conversation. So just going through the process, even if I don't feel 100%, and then getting it published, it feels great by the time you're finished. So
absolutely. And I imagine you've met some amazing, amazing people because of your show.
Oh yeah. No, it's been one of the best things I've ever done, actually. Just getting to talk to people like you. And I love to pick people's brains, because we all go through certain things. So it doesn't matter if I'm talking to like a web designer or a chiropractor who's trying to get customers, customer service issues. I always try to feed off that energy and get something for myself and the audience. So it's great. So tell us, Robert, about the 4 currencies of life. What is that?
Yeah, and I've got to always make sure I give credit where credit is due. Amazing friend of mine, and I nicknamed him a lot of years ago. I nicknamed him the Quantum Monk, and the reason is because he actually spent 8 years as a monk. He did over 15,000 hours of meditation while he was a monk. And he also studies quantum physics. And his brilliance is just mind-blowing. He can tell you all about spirituality, and he can tell you the science behind it. And in his studies, there's a number of things that he researched and came up with during those times, especially as he's come from being a monk into studying quantum physics. And he came across this thing called the 4 currencies. And it's amazing what he's researched, that and another thing that he calls his chaos modules, but it wasn't his passion to teach it. And I said, Greg, this is mind-blowing information. Can I get it out to the world? And he's like, Robert, absolutely. He said, and so I spent a number of hours interviewing him and recording Zoom sessions with him so I can make sure I was understanding it to the level that he had really gone in. And as more and more I studied it, it's like, totally makes sense. And so the 4 currencies, the first currency is what everybody might think of, money. And what people don't realize is that you can either have too much money or too little money. Too much money is called affluenza. And affluenza is basically you start doing weird things with money. So as an example, I use the example of a prince somewhere in the United Arab Emirates. He decided to buy a plane, and he decided to buy an A380, the double-decker planes. He spent $1 billion on this plane, spent $100 million on re-renovating it to his party plane. And so that's kind of a good example of what happens if you have too much money. You spend $1.1 billion just to party, right? Too little money is called poverty. And so a lot of people, and I don't know if you've ever experienced it, Luke, but to me, one of the biggest stresses I've ever gone through was when I was financially in debt really deep and stressed out beyond belief. So, and that stress does weird things to people, and health-wise, relationships, all that. And so what I've realized is that there's actually like a too low and you feel it because you're in that poverty range. Too high, you notice you start doing weird things. So, but there's a zone in between, and everybody's zone is different. Like for me, I have friends that the more money they can have, the happier they are. But for me, I don't need to have millions and millions and millions and millions. I have a lifestyle that my wife and I like. And as long as I've got the investments and the cash flow to support that, that's where my life is very, very good. Anything less, I start feeling tense and stressed. Anything more, I notice we start doing weird things with it. So everybody's zone tends to be a little different. And people will go, well, Robert, how do I figure out my zone? Just watch your life. Notice when you start getting stressed about money because you don't have enough. And notice when things are good, when you seem to all of a sudden start to think of weird things to do with your money. And you'll kind of get an idea. And there's no exact science that I've figured out yet. But that's the first currency.
Right.
The second currency.
I've been through both. Yeah. And I was just going to say I've been through both, and I know what you mean. When I never really thought of it that way of having too much money, but I do recall, having more than what I needed and getting sidetracked into things that didn't make a lot of sense in hindsight, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the stress of not having enough money was terrible. It was like mentally, it was the hardest part of my life. That was about 10 years ago. And it was really, really stressful. I mean, it made it hard for me to be a good father. It made it hard for me to be a good friend to people. For me, it was really, really challenging. So,
and you're no different.
So what's the
so many
second
people.
one?
Yeah, the second one is a currency we all have the exact same amount of, and that's the currency of time. Okay. And so if you have too much time on your hands, that's boredom. If you have too little time on your hands, that's stress. And so it interested me when, March 10th, 2020, I land back here in Canada from doing a 3-day training in India. March 11th, I get put into isolation because the world changed. And all of a sudden I went from traveling over 200,000 miles a year around the world training to no live events, all my live events being canceled. And so all of a sudden now I've got 24/7 at home, and I'm like excited because this is the goal. I even with flying 200,000 miles a year, Luke, I was still taking 6 months a year off because I learned I like my time off. And so all of a sudden I'm at home 24/7, and I find I'm busier than when I was traveling around the world. So it always interested me when you'd hear people, especially at the beginning of COVID, going, I'm bored. I got nothing to do. And so that's where the currency of time comes in, is because a lot of people I've noticed are really good at making themselves busy, but a lot of people don't know how to be productive. And so if they're struggling financially, they're going, well, I don't have time to do anything. And it's like, well, if we were to look at your day to day, I guarantee you, if we were to give you focus time, you'd be way more productive. And in 2 hours of focus time, you could outdo 8 hours of just busy time. And so when you look at your currency of time, it's about, am I utilizing it, or am I just being really good at making myself busy so that then I'm so tired and so drained that when I'm not doing something, I'm passed out because I need rest. And the currency of time is a really, like, I mentioned I was flying 200,000 miles a year. I have colleagues, one colleague, while I was doing 200,000, he was doing 1,000,000 miles a year. And I'm going, good on you. Have fun. That's too much for me.
Yeah.
I like my time off, right? Yeah. So again, everybody's different on that. So that's the second currency.
Okay.
And then the third currency is the currency of fame. And now you think about this one, especially with social media. Everybody wants their 15 minutes. They want their YouTube videos, their TikToks, all these things to go viral, right? And so too much fame, and you've seen it in actors, actresses, high-end sports athletes, too much fame ruins their lives. And so when people think they have too little fame, that's detrimental as well. And I remember listening to an interview that kind of put it into perspective for me a few years ago. And a person was interviewing Jennifer Lopez. And they said, Jennifer Lopez, you are like the megastar. You're, a singer, a dancer, an actress. You've got it all going on. But we also know that you are an amazing mom, family member. How do you separate the two? And I love what she said, Luke. She said this. She said, when I'm on camera or I'm singing or I'm doing my acting, I'm J-Lo. But when I'm at home, I'm Jennifer Lopez. Because I've learned I need to have those that separated. And that really hit me because I realized I'm on stage in front of thousands of people for up to 12 hours a day, 3 to 5 days at a time. And when I'm training, when I'm doing interviews, when I'm mentoring, I'm Robert Raymond Riopel. But when I'm home, I'm Robert or Rob. And home is where I get grounded. Right. And so as an example, I can come home from, say, spending 2 or 3 weeks overseas, training thousands of students. I've got assistants that take care of getting food, take care of this, take care of everything. I get home and it's a running joke with my wife and I, and she's like, honey, you're home. You have no more assistants. Go take out the garbage. And I'm like, absolutely.
Right.
Because, if I allow myself to go, but honey, I'm the rock star, and I let my ego go, that's going to impact every other area. That's every other relationship.
Right.
And that's why with fame, another thing I do is whenever I'm in front of a large audience, one of the first things I do within about 10, 15 minutes of being on stage, I'll walk down off the stage. I'll find someone who I know is tall. I'll ask them if they'll assist me. I'll have them stand up. We'll face the camera together so everybody sees it on the jumbo screens. And I'll go to the audience and say, I want you to notice something. I am short. And of course, when I say that, the audience laughs. And I say, now, why would I tell you that? I thank the person, let them sit down. And I say, why would I tell you that? Well, I want you all to understand something. That just because I'm on that stage doesn't mean I'm any better than you. I'm no different. Now, is it possible I might have information you don't have? Absolutely. But isn't it also true that all of you have information I don't have? See, we're no different, ladies and gentlemen. And I said that context right away, Luke, because I went through my life putting so many people up on pedestals thinking they were way better than me, that I could never achieve what they did because they were special in some way. And it probably stemmed from one of my mentors. He gave me some advice when I started training. And I would say it's probably the best advice I was ever given that I chose not to use. And let me explain what I mean by that. He looked at me and said, Robert, when you're on stage and you're in front of a big audience, you've got to make sure your audience never believes they can be as good as you. And I looked at him. I said, pardon me? He said, no, to keep moving forward, they've got to believe that they can't reach your status. That's what's going to keep you ahead. And I looked at him and I said, I appreciate the advice. I said, but my goal is not to have people believe they can be as good as me. I want them to believe they can be better than me. And he looked at me and said, well, why would you do that? And I said, because I'm already impacting thousands of lives around the world. So if they can be better than me, that means they're impacting even more lives. And to me, that's a win. That means we're helping more people.
Yeah.
So why would I want to hold them back? And so I don't know if that makes sense, Luke, but that's kind of the way I look at things with that currency of fame. And that's number 3. And then number 4.
It does make sense to me. Yep.
Then the 4th currency is the one I really focus on, especially over the last few years. It is the currency of experience. And what this one is this is where in your moment, day to day, what is the experience of the day you're having? And I'll go back again. I'm sitting here because, I know I'm going to be up early for training, and I don't sleep really well a lot of times anyway. So I was just sitting in my recliner, relaxing, going through my mind. Okay, what's my day going to be? What am I grateful for? And just enjoying kind of the quiet. I'm watching this storm come through, and I'm like, what's the experience of this storm? Why is it grabbing my attention? And by bringing myself back to present, see, so many people, they get overwhelmed because they're so far in the future trying to figure everything out that they forget to be in that moment and experience what's going on. And so currency of experience is about what is the experience you're having in your day-to-day life, or what would you really like to experience? And a friend of mine who's a coach, he said, as an example, what he would teach his coaching clients, he goes through mission or vision boards with them. And he had one of his clients, and he noticed as they're going through the board, he says, I see you have a Lamborghini on there. He goes, oh, yeah, that's my ultimate car. He goes, why? He says, he told him, he could tell him the horsepower, he could tell him the 0 to 60 in how many seconds, all this. He had all this information. And my friend said, well, here's a question. Have you ever driven one or rode in one? Well, no, I will when I get one. He says, well, how do you know it's what you truly want? He says, well, because I know everything about the car. He says, okay, before our next call, here's what I want you to do. I want you to find a way to either test drive one, rent one, some way to experience that car. And then tell me what you noticed when we get back together. So the guy did, and they get on their next call and says, so how did it go? Were you able to ride in a Lamborghini? He says, yeah. He says, me and a buddy, we went down to a dealership. We did a test drive. It was pretty amazing. He said, and? He goes, but I don't want a Lamborghini. He goes, why?
Right.
He says, I'm 6'3". Getting in and out of that thing was painful. He said it was painful.
Super uncomfortable.
Right. He said, so unless you had experienced it, you never would have known. And so that's what I invite people to do with the currency of experiences. Don't just say, hey, I'm going to do this or I'm going to do that. What's the experience you want to have with it? What experience could you create? If you're having an interaction with someone, how can you be there so present with them that you get an experience of that person, not just, oh, hey, it was nice having a conversation. And, as an example, have you ever been talking to someone, Luke, and they may be there physically, but, mentally and emotionally they're somewhere else? Have you ever experienced that?
Yes. Quite often. So, often, but yes.
And so it's about, how can I be here in the moment to really experience? And that's why I focus on that experience. So everything I do now, I love running masterminds. And so it's not, how do I have a half decent mastermind? It's, what experience can I put around it that people will go, wow. I did a mastermind last year before the lockdown in January. I invited 8 of my students. They met me in Florida. We boarded a private jet. We flew to the Bahamas, and we masterminded all day on a Sandals Resort beach, had breakfast, lunch, dinner, hopped on the jet, flew back to Florida that night. As we're coming across the mainland onto Florida, all of a sudden the Kennedy Space Center launches a rocket into space, and we got to watch it from launch to atmosphere. That was an experience. And people go, what made you think of doing that? And I said, I've never flown on a private jet. I wanted to fly on one. So I thought, instead of me just paying for it, why not actually make it a business expense and get paid to go on a private jet? Why not? So I made it an experience.
Right.
And so that's the fun I like to have.
That's awesome. I love it. That's fantastic. So in the interest of time, I want to jump to, you've got so many great topics that you talk about, and I'm going to put links to your website and everything so people can check you out. But the last thing I wanted to ask you about today is, how does a speaker or a trainer become more impactful?
One of the ways is be you, be authentic. It goes back to when you're asking about Les Brown. Is he who we see on stage? Is that who you see off? I believe, Luke, that the greatest gift anybody can give this planet is to be themselves. And so when you're trying to be someone else, you're not being as, passionate or as really powerful as you truly could be. Powerful in a way that you can impact people's lives. And so as a speaker and a trainer, I love to, and this is my true passion, is I actually love to watch someone on stage, and with just a few little adjustments, I can enhance their authenticity. I can enhance their connection with their audience. With COVID, I went from traveling all over the world to not traveling at all. And one of the reasons, you talk about moves. One of the reasons we moved to this acreage we have now is we wanted to get back to Central Alberta. It's where my wife and I met. It's where we started dating. It's where we got married.
Yeah.
But the other reason we bought this acreage is because I wanted to slow down even more. And instead of me traveling around the world, we wanted to create a training center on our property where our students could come here from around the world, and I could work with them one-on-one or in small groups. And so because of COVID, this dream that was going to be 3, 4, 5 more years down the road, we actually have created. We broke ground in December, and I'm looking out my window right now at the side of my training center that I'll be moving in the next week into it. And so that dream has come to reality because the more I can help someone be them and get out of their head when they're talking to their audience and actually be connected to their audience, the more impact they're going to have, which means the more change they're going to help people go through, whether it's no matter what their topic is, you can have an impact with people. So that's what I love to do. And that's how I love to help people.
Mm-hmm. How do we get out of our heads if you notice someone on stage and they're kind of stuck in their head, not really connecting with the audience? Like, what are those little adjustments you get them to do?
Well, it could be something as simple as, most people, the reason they're in their head is because they're trying to think about what they're going to say. They want to say the right words. They're afraid to make a mistake. What if I say the wrong thing? And so I work with them, first of all, on understanding that, preparation is key. But the moment you step on the stage, I want you to talk with your audience, not talk at them. Meaning, make eye contact. Pretend like it's you and me having a conversation right now. You and I are here just having a conversation. And so be the same thing in your audience. I don't care if you have one person or 5,000 people. Can you have a conversation where they feel like you're having that conversation with them? And there's little adjustments I can do. Like if someone's on a stage and I can tell they're in their head, I'll say stop. And I might get them to do jumping jacks. I might get them to run around the room, because easiest way to get out of your head is to get into your body. So by putting them into a physical activity, it drops them from here into their body, which makes them more present. So there's little techniques that can be done. Yeah, for sure.
Nice. Yeah, I'm sure it depends on the situation and the individual. So those are some great reminders, though. Get into your body to get out of your head. I remember that from years ago. And thanks for reminding me of that one. So, Robert, you've got a great website at robertriopel.com. Tell us about what we can find at your website.
Well, I have my own podcast. I haven't recorded an episode in over 2 years, but every episode is the audio and the transcript is on my website. It lets you know how to be able to kind of follow what I do. Facebook is also a great one. I have a Facebook fan page that people can follow me. And as I do lessons, I post them up there. But what I'd also love to do for your listeners and your audience, Luke, is I'd love to give them a gift where my book, Success Left a Clue, they can actually get the ebook version as a download as our gift to them for me being on your show. And nice. I'd love for people, but I got to give it with a warning though. And the warning is this. It's not a book to be read. It's a workbook, because remember, step 3 is taking action. And one of the biggest reasons why people don't succeed is they don't take action. So as I go through the book, I'll give them action steps, and I'll say, before you read further, do this action. And so that they're actually participating and moving themselves forward. And then when they go to read again, it'll say, first thing I say is, if you didn't do the last action, stop reading now, go back and complete that action before you carry on. And so to be able to access that, they can actually just go to SLAC, which stands for Success Left a Clue. So SLAC.rocks, ROCKS, /book, and they'll be able to get the PDF at no cost.
Excellent. So we'll put those links right in the show notes. And I love how the links are clickable. So if someone is on a treadmill or if they're walking, they don't have to type in a web address. They just tap on it. It'll take them right to your page. That's fantastic.
Great way to do it. Yep.
Robert Riopel, thanks so much for your time this morning. It was great hearing about your life in Alberta and the acreage and all your travels in Les Brown and some great tips for all of us today. Thank you.
Oh, my absolute pleasure. Glad you connected with me and said, let's get you on the show.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Newtown Big Dreams podcast with your host, Luke Menkes, and his authentic guests. And we love our listeners and hope you subscribe now to learn more about the amazing journeys of our incredible guests who relocated to find a new town, big dreams. And remember, make your dreams big.